Welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into any equations, graphs, or theories, I want to take about 10 minutes to tell you exactly what this playlist is, why it exists, and why the timing for learning economics has never been more important than it is right now. Turn on the news today and you will hear about inflation eating into your paycheck, interest rates climbing, trade wars reshaping global supply chains, and governments debating how much to spend and how much to borrow. Every single one of those stories is an economic story, and if you do not have a framework for understanding them, you are essentially watching a movie in a language you have never studied. This playlist is your translator. We are working through every chapter of Principles of Economics, 2nd edition, one of the most widely used introductory economics textbooks in the world, and we are going to make it accessible, practical, and genuinely interesting. Let me walk you through every chapter so you know exactly what is coming. Chapter 1, Welcome to Economics, sets the stage. We establish what economics actually is, introduce the concept of thinking at the margin, and explain why economists approach problems the way they do. Think of it as learning the rules of the game before you start playing. Chapter 2, Choice in a World of Scarcity, tackles the most fundamental idea in all of economics. Resources are limited and wants are unlimited, so every choice involves a trade-off. We will explore opportunity cost, production possibility frontiers, and why every decision you make has a hidden price tag. Chapter 3, Demand and Supply, is the beating heart of microeconomics. We build the supply and demand model from scratch, explore what shifts the curves, and see how markets find equilibrium. This chapter alone will change how you read economic news forever. Chapter 4, Labor and Financial Markets, takes the supply and demand model and applies it to two of the most important markets in your life, the market for your work and the market for money. We look at wages, interest rates, and how these markets respond to outside pressure. Chapter 5, Elasticity, asks the question of how sensitive buyers and sellers actually are to price changes. Is demand for gasoline elastic or inelastic? What about luxury goods? This concept explains pricing strategies, tax policy, and business decisions in ways that will surprise you. Chapter 6, Consumer Choices, goes inside the mind of the buyer. Using utility theory and budget constraints, we model how rational people make purchasing decisions and what happens when prices or incomes change. Chapter 7, Production Costs and Industry Structure, flips the lens to look at firms. We explore fixed and variable costs, economies of scale, and how the structure of an industry shapes the behavior of every company inside it. Chapter 8, Perfect Competition, examines the idealized market structure, where many firms sell identical products and no single firm controls the price. It gives us a benchmark for evaluating every other market structure we will study. Chapter 9, Monopoly, is the polar opposite. What happens when one firm dominates an entire market? We look at how monopolies set prices, restrict output, and create economic harm, and why governments often step in. Chapter 10, Monopolistic Competition and Oligopoly, covers the messy middle ground where most real industries actually live. Think fast food, smartphones, and airlines. These markets mix competition with market power in fascinating ways. Chapter 11, Monopoly and Antitrust Policy, connects market theory to real-world law. We examine how governments use antitrust regulation to prevent monopolistic abuse, and look at landmark cases that shaped entire industries. Chapter 12, Environmental Protection and Negative Externalities, introduces the idea that markets sometimes fail. When a factory pollutes a river, that cost falls on people who never agreed to pay it. We explore carbon taxes, regulations, and cap-and-trade systems. Chapter 13, Positive Externalities and Public Goods, is the flip side. Some activities, like education or scientific research, create benefits that spill over to everyone. We discuss why markets underproduce these goods and what role government plays. Chapter 14, Labor Markets and Income, returns to the job market with greater depth. We look at wage determination, discrimination, unions, and why identical workers sometimes earn very different wages. Chapter 15, Poverty and Economic Inequality, confronts some of the most pressing social questions of our time. How is poverty measured? What does the income distribution actually look like? What policies have worked to reduce inequality? Chapter 16, Information Risk and Insurance, explores what happens when one party in a transaction knows more than the other. Adverse selection and moral hazard sound technical, but they explain everything from why your insurance premium is what it is to why used car markets can collapse. Chapter 17, Financial Markets, unpacks stocks, bonds, and the role of financial instruments in the broader economy. We connect financial markets to real economic outcomes and explain concepts every investor needs to understand. Chapter 18, Public Economy, examines how government makes economic decisions, why public choices sometimes differ from private ones, and the economics behind voting, bureaucracy, and public programs. Chapter 19, The Macroeconomic Perspective, marks our transition from microeconomics to the big picture. We introduce GDP, national income accounting, and the tools economists use to measure the health of an entire economy. Chapter 20, Economic Growth, asks why some countries are wealthy and others are not. We examine the roles of capital, labor, technology, and institutions in driving long-run prosperity. Chapter 21, Unemployment, defines the different types of joblessness, explains how unemployment is measured, and separates cyclical unemployment from the natural rate that exists even in a healthy economy. Chapter 22, Inflation, digs into rising prices, what causes them, who gets hurt, and how central banks respond. Given recent inflation headlines, this chapter is more relevant than ever. Chapter 23, International Trade and Capital Flows, introduces the global economy and explains why countries trade, how balance of payments works, and what it means when a country runs a trade deficit. Chapter 24, The Aggregate Demand and Aggregate Supply Model, is the cornerstone of macroeconomic analysis. This framework lets us model recessions, booms, inflation, and policy responses all in one unified diagram. Chapter 25, The Keynesian Perspective, presents the argument that markets do not always self-correct quickly and that government spending can stabilize a struggling economy. These ideas shaped modern fiscal policy. Chapter 26, The Neoclassical Perspective, offers the counterpoint, emphasizing long-run market adjustment, the limits of government intervention, and the importance of expectations in shaping economic outcomes. Chapter 27, Money and Banking, explains what money actually is, how banks create it through lending, and why the money supply matters for economic activity. Chapter 28, Monetary Policy and Bank Regulation, shows how central banks like the Federal Reserve use interest rates and other tools to manage inflation and support employment. Chapter 29, Exchange Rates and International Capital Flows, connects currencies to trade, investment, and economic policy in ways that affect prices in your own grocery store. Chapter 30, Government Budgets and Fiscal Policy, examines how governments tax and spend, what deficits mean, and how fiscal policy can be used to manage the business cycle. Chapter 31, The Impacts of Government Borrowing, explores the long-run consequences of national debt on interest rates, private investment, and economic growth. Chapter 32, Macroeconomic Policy Around the World, takes a global tour comparing how different countries manage growth, inflation, and unemployment with very different tools and philosophies. Chapter 33, International Trade, revisits trade theory with greater depth, covering comparative advantage, trade agreements, and the real distributional effects of open markets. Chapter 34, Globalization and Protectionism, brings the entire course full circle, weighing the benefits of an interconnected world against the real costs that some workers and communities bear when borders open up. By the time you complete this playlist, you will be able to read economic news with genuine understanding, analyze policy arguments from multiple perspectives, make smarter decisions in your own financial life, and hold an informed opinion on debates that affect every person on this planet. That is a serious set of skills, and this channel is going to help you build them one chapter at a time. If you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now. Every chapter in this series is already being built out, and you do not want to fall behind. Hit the notification bell so you catch each new upload the moment it goes live. Let us get started. Chapter 1 is next.